you, back at you. Tell you what's master, coming at you, coming at you. Rhyme style disaster, coming at you, back at you. Tell you what's master, coming at you.
Hello and welcome to Cut the Bull. I am Charles Love, alongside my co-host Wilfred Riley and Trump's favorite surrogate, Christy Kelly. Hello all, how are you all doing?
Great.
Well, what about you?
I'm doing all right. I've been I'm hoping today to learn a lot from you two. I have been, obviously you can't ignore it, but I've been for the most part downplaying the madness that is the election. So I know we'll get into this, but there's supposed to be all this kind of really bad thing coming up in the next day or so on Trump and on Kamala. I've heard those. I don't know how much more it could be. I see all the people that tried out. I see the bad ads. I see some stuff. Some people send me stuff, but I've been trying to not get too crazy about it. But people seem to be losing their minds, and not in a good way. It doesn't leave me very hopeful for the country going forward, regardless of what happens, and not just because of the election, because I think people are really, I know on the one side, we used to say to people at TDS, people are really losing their minds, like really, like there's something really wrong with them. So talk to me about what you're seeing, what you're hearing, and what you think about the way this election is going. Will, let's go with you first.
Sure. I mean, so there are two things. There's the election itself and kind of the horse race, and then there's the crazy paranoia and so on around it, which is unbelievable. I mean, the election itself is just it's a close electoral race. I mean, I watched the betting markets. I think they're more reliable than the polls. And I mean, Trump's got a 55-60% chance to win. I mean, I'm almost certainly gonna vote for Trump. I mean, he's got a good chance, but Harris is right there, 45% or whatever. I mean, it's the polling, there's a 2-point gap. The one thing I would say about the polls as a political scientist is if the polls show Harris up by 1 nationally, that means she probably is going to lose because the polling is very concentrated in urban areas where even the Republicans lean left. And people also sometimes just lie if they're confronting a female or minority poll taker because so much crazy stuff's been said about Trump. And yeah, a lot of successful males, I do sometimes too, just lie for fun. Like what? Not even like your relationship or anything, but like if someone comes calls your phone and starts saying all this crap about like who do you endorse? I don't know, Goku. So all those are problems. The point though is that Trump, he was down by 7 in 2020. He was down by 5 in 2016. You're talking about the major polls, Zogby and so on. And he won at least one of those elections, let's say. So if he's down by 1, I mean, there's probably a lot of subtle, low enthusiasm, but ready Republican voters. So, okay, that's that. I kind of rambled a bit. But the second thing is, you've got the election, then you've got the craziness surrounding it. And the left really in this country only knows a few weapons. Like he's racist, he's sexist, he's Hitler, maybe sexual abuse of women. Trump gets hit with the same 5 things every time. So like I actually just had an online kind of back and forth with people defending Aaron Rupar. I think Rupar himself just weighed in on Twitter because Rupar, the journalist, just came out and said that Trump is going to put people in camps. So he shared some other piece and was like, even if you're a good blue stater and you recycle or whatever, they're still going to put you in the camps. You're the internal enemy in the blues. And this is just crazy paranoia, but hundreds of people were retweeting it and saying, yes, of course. So, I mean, there's the actual race, which is pretty close. And then there's all the nonsense around it, like not just on the left, but mostly.
Man, I got questions about the crazy side, including the camps. But first, I want to hear Christy's view and take on what's going on. She just came from a rally, so it's all fresh and exciting. But before that, the poll thing, I want to get your opinion on that too, because I think Will is dead on that, and I'll go a step further in the sense that it's never really. I think polling was never really that good anyway, but people did a good job of it for years, and I think in the last 10 to 12 years they were getting bad at it anyway. And social media and the lying and all this other stuff just made it worse. It's like you can't even trust them. So I feel you can really do, I mean, the betting thing is a good idea too, Will. The only thing you can do is look at trends. So you just have to look at all the polls. Don't care what they say. Just look at how they all move over time. So if Kamala's up by 2 in 4 polls, and Trump's up by 5 in 4 polls. And then a week later, she's only up by 1 and he's up by 7. You're looking at all of them. You can't just look at any one poll. But I think that the polling is the science has been lost. I mean, they'll get it back at some point probably, but you can't really rely on that. But Christy, what do you think about the polling and the election in general?
Yeah, well, talking about the polling, so I really got into looking at the polls in the midterm. So Abe Hamadeh and Blake Masters here in Arizona.
Right.
I did some work with those two camps, and in looking at the polls, I looked at the questions they're asked, and the questions they're asked can be skewed by either team to make them totally unreliable. And Blake Masters, he presented several polls where he was, a 10-point lead on Abe Hamadeh, and Abe ended up blowing him out of the water. I forget what he won by, but he won by a significant amount. So ever since then, like I've definitely have a heavy skepticism on polls. How many people are they polling? I think a lot of people don't even realize. Sometimes these polls are like 500 people or 1,000 people, and then the questions are so just slanted. Another thing with the polls, Will, that you hit on, I'm in a swing state. I'm in Arizona, so take my house. We literally get calls off the bat. 3 voters in my house. My husband does not answer calls from an unknown number. So there, you're never gonna, a lot of, men, if it's an unknown number, they're not answering it. Or if it's like a, 888, some sales call, they're not answering it. My daughter's 18. She says, Mom, they keep calling. Let's just go ahead and vote early because so they'll stop. So again, she's not answering polls. And I'm like, I may answer it and then I'll say, okay, how many questions? This person said 50. I was like, you are out of your mind. I am not staying on the phone for 50 questions. So it's hard to poll people, especially, I'm sorry, most Black people don't have time to be sitting on the phone answering polls. We're just not going to do it. So it's hard to poll people. So I did.
Stop. What are
Yes.
Black folk doing that they can't take a poll that all the rest of Americans got time to do? What are Black folk doing?
I don't know. Maybe it's just me and my household, but we don't have time for
What are you
it.
people
We're
doing?
not gonna sit there for I did one poll and I instantly regretted it halfway through.
Wow.
Um it's just too many questions. I just don't have time for it.
Right.
So I did just leave another Trump rally. I had said that I don't even know how many rallies I've gone to this season. I mean, it's a ridiculous amount. But I said I wasn't going to go, but then my family wanted to go, and my husband had never been to one. So off we go to the Trump rally. So I was a little nervous because it's in Phoenix. Phoenix is the belly of the beast. It's a blue area. It was on ASU's campus, super liberal campus. I was thinking he wasn't going to be able to fill it. And I kid you not, 5,000 seats. By the time Trump got up, almost every seat in the House was filled, even up to the rafters. And so I think Arizona is safe. Now, I will say about Trump and the things that he says at his rallies, I have his speech almost memorized. Trump is the type to like get bored. So I think he just starts riffing. I mean, he's a comedian. He just starts talking. So I think conservatives have learned to kind of, just ignore half of what he says because he's just joking or he's just being an entertainer. He doesn't really mean it. He's just putting on. Whereas CNN is taking him literally and just or assuming they're, trying to take him literally
Right. Well,
to
two
make
things.
points.
I guess I'm going to kind of jump to the end, but you said that somebody was saying that right at the beginning, before he won in 16, we were talking about the problem with the way people assess Trump on the left and the right. It's like conservatives take him seriously, but they don't take him literally. And the left takes him literally, but they don't take him seriously, right? And so you're definitely right about that. But to your point about being at the rally and him getting bored, and so he just kind of riffs, that could be good and bad. And so I want to hear your take, both of you, on this one. So apparently he's doing Rogan tomorrow, right? So when I heard that, I was like, "Ooh, I don't know about that one. That doesn't seem
Yeah.
like a good thing." And it's not. And so I was saying it to a friend. They were like, "What is he, like a leftist attacker?" I was like, "He's more of a libertarian center, but compared to the mainstream media, he's right wing. That's not the problem. He's going to ask him some tough questions because that's what he'll do. But that's not the problem. He can handle the tough questions." They said, "Well, what is your problem?" I said, "You ever watched or listened to Joe Rogan's podcast?" They're like, "No, it's 11 million hours, right?" So when you get to that time, you just, I mean, obviously there's a worst case scenario that could happen, But what happens is you already said he's the type of person that just bored, so he started talking about stuff. Joe Rogan's all over the place. So they could be talking politics, his last term, the accusations, and then all of a sudden they could be talking about nude models and cake. I mean, you never know where he'll go. And Trump will be like, like a typical politician. "Oh, I'd rather not go there. Let's get back to the topic." He'll just answer anything. So you never know what he might end up saying. So isn't there a concern about what he might say if they go, 3 some odd hours?
The first thing I tweeted was, I hope he doesn't get too comfortable. I think he's gonna just think he's just talking with his MMA buddy, talking with one of the bros, and just forget that he's talking to America.
Yep. Will, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a big risk. So I think there are two big risks with Joe Rogan because of the kind of free form podcast it is. The first is that Trump at some point starts rambling or gets tired or just looks stupid. I mean, like Trump's not Joe Biden, but Trump is 78, something like that. I mean, Biden, I think, is 82 now. So Joe Rogan is, I mean, he's 40 or 50, but he's a buff guy. He goes cougar hunting and all that, shoots, raw baby blood into his arms to give him energy. I mean, he's going to be ready to go for this whole conversation and very possibly on something. And Trump's going to have to match that pace and match that energy. Right. I think there's a good chance he can, actually, because I've seen Trump on Theo Von's podcast, this kind of thing. And he comes across as like, an old player, like he's not Donald Trump from the 80s, but definitely as someone who's been in a lot of social environments, he's pretty ready to go. But I think the second thing is Trump's weakness is kind of his unscripted mouth to some extent. Like he said things, excuse language, Christy, but he said things on hot mics or just over the air, like there's nothing in the world like great pussy. And Joe Rogan is the kind of person who's going to ask him some of those questions like, well, what do you mean by that statement? And I can see Donald Trump saying, well, it's true, isn't it? Right. And then him and Joe going back and forth for 10 minutes about this and providing fodder for like the panicked, hysterical portion of the internet. Right. That's very likely to happen. Like if Joe Rogan asks something like, would you theoretically drop a nuclear bomb on a Mexican cartel tactical suitcase nuke? I could easily see Trump saying, yeah, those people are bad. They're scum. They're animals. We got to wipe them out of the way. I mean, I would say this myself, actually. But like, and that being cut so that like Trump says Hispanic should be exterminated. That's the big risk of this kind of like totally freeform environment.
Yeah, I don't know. Well, I guess we will see. I guess you all will see because I'm not.
Let me make one comment. So I don't watch Rogan. The only time I watched him was when Cat Williams was on. I don't do long form podcasts. I have like I just can't do. My husband gets on me all the time. I just can't do it. But I will say, I think Rogan is going to set him up nicely because I think he thinks that Kamala, I call her Cammy online, so I'm trying not to do that here. I think Kamala is so bad that Rogan is going to give Trump somewhat softballs and not go into dangerous area.
I don't think it's possible. I agree with your views on his views on Kamala and all that. But when he gets in the seat, Joe Rogan's going to do what Joe Rogan does. He wouldn't be able to not. I mean, he's not going to attack him, but he wouldn't be able to go. I mean, if he goes a normal, Trump could, in theory, be like a Kamala team and just say, well, we can only give you an hour and a half. But if he goes full Rogan time, he can't sit. He can't control himself enough to say, well, I'm only going to ask him the nice stuff. No, he's just going to do, and he kind of riffs his questions. So, a lot of times you don't write everything down. You have some things you want to talk about, but based on what the person says, that's what you say. So he's not going to stop. So I don't know. It's going to be interesting, but Will talked about the crazy, and I've seen some of that, even not looking at it directly. But I think that one thing I will say this, one thing that I'm hoping, the country being saved aside, that we're going to be in trouble kind of either way, that at least after this turn, people will finally be tired of celebrities. I mean, I might have had a different take because I saw conservatives saying, well, that's pretty cool. Even if I don't agree with it, that's pretty cool. I did not appreciate, and thought it was a waste. All of the nonstop, the Usher dancing, the Eminem, Obama doing 8 Mile raps and all that stuff. It's like, what's the point? I mean, really, we're still doing this? Really? I don't understand. And if you say, well, the people older get mature as they get older, but the younger people might still think it's cool. No, to you got a kid that's just starting, just at the age to vote, Christy. No 16, 18, 20, 22-year old, right? They see Eminem as an older guy. They think him as a cool older guy. So Obama's like 62, right? You got a 62-year-old guy rapping some 47-year-old's lyric. That's not cool. Am I missing something?
No, I mean, I definitely think you're right. And as far as it moving the needle, so I heard that Beyonce is going to be performing.
And that might move the needle. Beyonce,
No, you know why
no,
it won't? Is because she's doing it in Houston. If she really wanted to help her, why wouldn't she be doing it in Atlanta and then, measure that with a, voter registration? But doing it in Houston, Texas is not in play, I don't think. I don't think Texas is in play. So
Mhm.
why is there a concert for Kamala? Can you help me out with that, Will? I don't understand. How is that helping?
Well, I think it's just the general. So first of all, I think it's important to realize, and we all kind of do, that famous people are just people like everyone else. Like a lot of them are weird geeks, actually. Like I like Elon Musk a lot. He recently followed me on Twitter, actually. But I mean, I'm pretty sure that like he wasn't a high school quarterback, you know? Like many of these people are just ordinary citizens that were kind of stands for other people when they were growing up. So I think a lot of this is just like, hey, wouldn't it be cool to get a show hosted by Beyonce? Like if she volunteered to do two dates, I mean, anyone
Mm.
from a Democratic ex-governor of Texas to the candidate probably is pretty entranced by that. I don't know. I mean, in terms of the overall thing with celebrities, there's partly that. There's also the idea that these will activate the young, the non-committed voter base. They'll help people decide. You see that someone you love backs this candidate. I actually there's a famous study in business that finds that advertising doesn't really do shit, like bluntly. And it was really almost funny to read. Like the best brands in the world, like Aspirin, Mercedes, well-known Chinese restaurants, almost never advertise. They might do a classy magazine ad or something like that. But people know the symbol. Um, and I think that's true in a lot of cases. Like celebrity endorsements really don't do a whole lot. The one exception to that, I think, would be where you get someone that you don't expect that has a really committed fan base. So one of the endorsements Kamala Harris got was from Insane Clown Posse,
Oh,
which
really?
is
I didn't know
genuine.
that.
Yeah, ICP. Yeah, they did a whole thing where like they Shaggy Two Dope came out with the face paint on and said, we may be clowns, but not when it comes to women's reproductive rights. Shut the fuck up. But like the whole thing was like that Juggalo fan base, which is made up almost entirely of working class Midwestern white kids. Not kids now, they're all like
Yeah,
average
they're
age
old now, but
37.
yeah. Mhm.
Yeah, but like there are probably 10,000 people that are going to go vote for Kamala Harris that otherwise would have been incentivized to vote for Trump. Maybe the same with Eminem. So it can matter, and I think people just geek out when they see a famous person, and that's kind of the background. Would it make a normal adult, black or white, go vote like, ooh, Green Day supports whoever? I don't think so.
Then there's the other side. Even if that's true, and it has a little bit of impact. The key would be, I'm assuming, if done correctly. So I did see some of these ads that are just terrible. I mean, like I don't even understand what they're thinking. Like the ads about I eat carburetors. I'm a man. I eat carburetors for breakfast or whatever. But I love reproductive right. And then the celebrities where they get girl dads together to talk about. Or no, what my favorite was Breaking Bad guy. He was at a rally and he said that I am so look, and I'm never telling anybody who to vote for. Vote for whoever you want, especially vote for Kamala if you agree with her. Of course you could. Oh, you should.
Don't
But
vote for Kamala.
he got up there and he said, um, I am voting for Kamala because of abortion. As a father of a girl, and I'm looking at that. Am I getting this wrong? So you want her to be president so you don't have grandkids? Are you anti grandkids? What's the problem? Why is that? I mean, what man voting for her? Whatever. But what man would get up in front of a camera, in front of people, and say the number one issue to me in this election cycle is abortion?
Well, I mean, I'm pretty sure Christy has some strong opinions on this too, but like so actually I have a pretty well thought out position on this that might be a column. Like, first of all, the Democrats are appealing right now to the most cringe possible version of masculinity. And my take on it would be that they're not actually trying to appeal to normal men. They're trying to appeal to women, gay dudes, and so on by putting people who seem like normal men in adverts. And that's really common, actually. Like the reason that upper middle class black people are used so much in TV advertising for Lexuses and so on isn't that that's something, or Volvos would be a good example, isn't that that's something that like a lot of brothers are going to run out and buy. It's that it makes the product seem appealing and diverse to the upper middle class white women that actually make most shopping decisions. I realized that years ago, there are papers about it. This is the same thing. Like they're not actually pitching that horrible ad, like I'm a man at men. They're not watching that in locker rooms. And actually, quick comment on that. All those guys in that ad turned out to be bisexual actors. Like someone went out and looked up the men, and they weren't just like normal girl dad guys. They were specifically people in the acting scene in LA and Seattle. So the pitch of this last thing, but the pitch of this like Democrats man push is sort of now you're a real man if you're out there serving women, letting your wife take the lead. You know, I love women that don't ever want kids. I love women that have kids via IVF. It's like everything but the normal mom. Um, I think you can't imagine an ad being targeted at women with the same pitch. Like, the most important thing for me as a wife is socially and sexually satisfying my husband. I love being married. And I think actually that would probably describe how more people feel, although by no means like a massive majority, than this stuff. But it's not targeted at guys, it's targeted at kind of that whole diaspora of people. They're saying we're changing masculinity that appeals to single women.
That's a good point. I didn't think about that. Christy, I have one for you. And it's probably get me in trouble, and I should do a disclaimer, but I don't really care enough. So I was saying that I don't understand the celebrity using celebrities of this pitch. Doing it's fine. You can throw a few dollars at something, see if it works. But this double down, this intense focus on it just seems like a waste. But I will say it probably makes more sense than the other thing that they're doing. I can't believe it. I don't care. So explain, Christy, to me this push and this heavy focus on black men. Hear me out. I love black men. I know some. I happen to be one. But last time I checked, Will can crunch the numbers for me. Blacks are just under 13% of the population. Let's say men are half, which they're not really half. I mean, women are slightly more, but let's call it half. And then at least a quarter of them are not old enough to vote. Of the ones left, most of them are apathetic, don't pay attention to any of the media that you're showing anyway, right? So they're not getting that. Then you got the small but growing percentage of them that are conservative that aren't going to listen to it anyway, right? So you're getting down to the smaller and smaller number. And then you take that subset out of the people in the swing states, because that's where you need them, right? Because if they're in Chicago, we don't really need their vote. We're going to win Illinois anyway. So now that number is getting smaller and smaller. And then, of course, now you got that push from the ADOS black who's like, she's Indian, she's not one of us, we're not voting for her. So what number of people, I mean, I think, as much as I mock it, I think having Taylor Swift and Eminem would probably do more for getting you votes than the focus on black men. What say you?
Yeah, so blacks have been the Democrat base. So Kamala has to.
I say people say that. I don't think that's true. I think black women have been the base.
Okay, blacks, 80 to 90%, she has to win. 80 to 90%.
True. Yeah, but
so
the black men are sitting at home.
It's not all going to be just women to get her to that 80 to 90%. So Trump, if he can pick off that 80, 90%, which he's doing with black men, then he will block her perhaps from winning unless she makes up that number elsewhere. Now, Will can probably crunch this better, but, enter the immigrants that are voting, illegally, enter, other sets of people that she's, reaching out to. But the blacks are the base. So right now she's in trouble and she's realizing that I'm losing the men. I'm losing that 80 to 90%. I think she's getting 70, something like that, or whatever.
So the 75. Issue is not that it's a big sex, is that she's
no. That's
one. What she had.
That's one issue. The other issue, this is what I think is the larger part. Black women are not used to black men in mass leading, especially on political issues.
I thought I was getting in trouble.
What happens if black men find their voice, stand up and start leading? they will then hopefully lead Black people en masse out of the Democratic Party, and they cannot afford that.
Well, the second one is definitely an issue. That's the reason why most women may vote for Democrats, but most married women don't. And I don't want to pick on anybody. I wouldn't be because they put it out in public. But that I know a woman who was a Democrat and her husband red pilled her.
Yeah. So I mean, that's like when
Christy
we're
just
talking
posted
about the
that,
numbers
right?
and all that, that's actually really, really common. And I think this is actually an important message for guys because again, you're seeing this incredibly lame shit, excuse me, from the Democrats to men about women. Like, you ever want to get laid, you better go for Kamala Harris. Matthew Iglesias actually did a series of tweets about that, like women are more left than men. I think that's exactly wrong. Like, if I were going to give advice to young men, it would just be totally ignore feminism. Like, be less sexist than you would be in the 1960s. The women are great. We've seen women do well in business, but everything else, like being physically fit, making money, training with your weapons, being a gentleman, like over and over, that stuff, it has been shown to be loved by the huge majority of women. So when people say like you women are on the left and men need to go there, no, I think if you're a confident guy, you're the breadwinner in a relationship, and you explain, okay, these are some of the conservative things you might not have heard. The chance of your girl moving toward you at least 75% is total, close to 100. So I think guys need to sort of stand up and start doing things that have been associated with masculinity. And that includes kind of starting some of these conversations and often taking the lead. Like, not all women prefer to be quote unquote submissive. Not all men prefer to be aggressive, but that's really, really common. And I don't think that the way women feel right now as single, alienated, urban feminists is the way women would feel in most cases after 2 years of a happy relationship. So that's a deep point in general. And the reasons Black men in particular are the focus right now, it's basically what Christy said. Like, if the Democrats fall below 75% of Blacks, they're done. Like, Black people, we criticize our own community, but like high voting demographic, concentrated in urban areas, no longer a particularly poor demographic, and breaks 94% for the Dems. If you look at Barack Obama, if that goes down to 68%, it's a wrap. Like 5, 6 swing states are gone. So they're very aware of this. Same thing with Jews, by the way. Very concentrated, influential urban areas have some money. There's a reason that certain groups are targeted and talked about.
Right. But I guess my issue is if that's the case, and I get it. I mean, I don't think, when you carve out the men, I think it's a little bit different, but the trends are still true, or what you're saying is true. But I just think that Black men in general, like, I know this is a crazy election, but in general, are more likely than Black women to just not to vote right, but to just not vote at all, right? So, which they always do, which is always to get out the vote, to rock the vote, trying to drive them to vote. That's fine. But it seems like this is different in the sense that, which is why people got offended by it. It's not like you're getting out the vote, like saying, hey, you shouldn't sit at home, you should vote. They're like shaming them and saying that you're bad and you're bad for women and you're not doing this and you're not a good Black person if you're not doing this. So I don't think if you're doing it because you're noticing the numbers that they're starting to leave, it just seems like a weird way to get them to come back. It's like they're leaving. It's like, oh, you gonna leave? You ain't blank anyway. And then he's like, I can't believe he didn't come back. I yelled at him and he didn't come back. Right? That's what I'm saying. It's so weird. It seems like, and then it's just so much time and energy on it.
I don't think that's a coincidence, actually. Like, I think that a lot of the leadership in the Democratic Party is made up of kind of the worst type of ex-girlfriend. Like, I mean, a lot of this stuff, when you look at like radical feminism, like the fourth wave versus the equally bad stuff from men on the right, like men's rights activism and so on, you're literally listening to cliche comments from like a domestic argument that's just short of abusive. Like, you don't even care about me. You don't support me. You don't fulfill your husbandly/wifely duties, blah, blah, blah. The Democratic pitch to men is 100% just like nasal shaming. I mean, it's just straight up, you're not doing what you should do. The way to be a man is to be constantly focused on serving and helping women. There's even some truth to that. It's just hard to take seriously in the context of people that objectively seem to hate you. I mean, like, I don't think Hillary Clinton loves the male half of the human race or loves white people very much or something like that. Right. Harris isn't as bad, Black Hillary. But I mean, it's the same sort of thing. Like, the most important thing in my life is serving my daughter. That's certainly top 10, but that's not a normal way to appeal to masculinity. It's the way people that have been raised in that essence of modern toxic gender debate think you would talk to guys. And what's happening actually, like when your girl says, get out of here, you ain't shit, you'll never be nothing. Like what happens if you're a normal guy and you don't want to have a domestic fight is that you leave.
Right.
Like that's it. And I think that's what you're seeing. Like the percentage of white men leaving the Democratic Party, successful black men, Asian business people, it's hyper high. Because in one sense, why would you want to associate with someone that objectively seems to hate you? Like put aside morality, what men did to women in 1930 or something like that. It's the same thing for whites with the Democrats, for blacks with some state level Republican parties. Why would you mess with someone that doesn't like you?
Quick and simple. Christy, speaking of celebrity, you had something you wanted to tell me about TDJ?
Yeah, so I did get I've been talking to someone who's doing some work in that area with the whole Diddy and TD Jakes, and I have not on purpose gone down the weeds in the Diddy thing because I'm like, okay, let me stay focused on the elections. I'm not going down the weeds. But I know that there's been rumors that TD Jakes bought a sex tape, allegedly, and that he was involved in the Diddy stuff. And I think it's going to come out, in the next little bit here that that was absolutely correct.
So he bought a tape of
Allegedly
yeah
of himself
of himself. Oh, right.
in the millions.
Right. To bought it to bury it.
Yes.
Hmm. Or to watch it with some popcorn and a nice Chianti.
Oh, yuck.
I don't know if I'm going to check that out. I mean, Diddy seemed to like mostly the fellas. I mean, while we're talking about black men, yeah,
That's who Kamala needs. She needs Diddy on her side. If he endorses her, then the black men will follow. No,
just throw a couple pills in the water, and all of a sudden everyone's happy. Anything could happen. I mean, like Diddy. So first, like obviously, we all include all proper legal disclaimers as we wait to see the outcome of the next news cycle. But I mean, like, yeah, you're innocent until you're proven guilty, absolutely. But yeah, that wouldn't surprise me, honestly. Like, if you look at the lineup of people that went to Diddy's parties, and the thing is, and this is what struck me with Epstein too, that a huge number of people, like men in particular, but upper class women as well, like knew what was going on. And people were dropping these references in hip hop music and even in a few cases in popular sermons. I mean, like Rick Ross has said in like 5 songs, like I'm in Miami partying with Puffy, and then laughs like you know what that is. So would one of these guys get their content back from Diddy if they could? Probably. And it's also like there's a weird thing about human nature here, right? Like I used to party fairly hard, but like that no one was being abusive. Like if you walk into a room and you see a bunch of topless teenage looking people walking around and there's a cavern in the back with 1,000 bottles of baby oil that you can see through a glass door, do you stay at the party? And I think a large number of people stayed at the party. Like NBA players have talked about this stuff with Diddy. Black politicians have talked about this stuff with Diddy. And it's not just black people. Leonardo DiCaprio went to these parties. Pink went to these parties. So like what's on all these hard drives? You check out Ricky Rose, what he's up to. And we'll see like if like Epstein, nothing ever came of that, right? Client list, you can find parts of it on WikiLeaks. Even that's been deleted. None of those people are ever going to be punished. Same thing with Diddy. I don't know. It wouldn't surprise me if preachers were there.
Wow. Oh, I guess we just have to stay tuned. But this is definitely a crazy story. Hopefully, unlike Epstein, this time somebody will. But the problem is, if this time people go to jail and get caught, it'd be a good thing as far as I'm concerned. I don't care. I want pedophiles and people who are trafficking kids and stuff in jail. But they're like, oh, but when the black man is selling women, across state lines and pimping them and drugging them, he goes to jail, but the white guy gets away with it. You'll hear a lot of that stuff.
I think the difference is of what I've seen. Like I said, I haven't been down the rabbit hole, but I have been seeing like the Bieber tapes, and there's just a lot of, secondary evidence of people looking really uncomfortable around Diddy.
Yeah.
So I think
he
that
likes
might
to
be
take
the
stuff.
difference.
Maybe that might be the difference too. He likes to take stuff. Or I just go to one of the many wise quotes from my co-host. He just said, well, you say that blacks get unfair treatment because they got more time for doing the same crime. Well, why don't you just lock them both up?
I was about to say that. Like it's that I can't imagine. So you are going to see this. I've already heard people saying this, like playing ball at I teach at a black college. You go down to the gym, you go to a barbershop, like, yeah, they're going to throw the book at Diddy. Black man doing all that can't be allowed. And it's like, well, it shouldn't be allowed. I mean, trying to have anal sex with Justin Bieber. How old was that kid? Like you've got to, you can't have that.
Wait.
Allegedly.
Yes, we're all going to say allegedly. I mean, Charles, that's one of the allegations. Like the allegation is
didn't
that
need
he
to
and
hear
Meek Mill
that.
were gay lovers. Like the allegation is Justin Bieber was at these parties when he was too
Well, no,
young
because
to be
Usher
there.
passed. Yeah, see now, no, la, 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 la.
Yeah, like Usher and Justin Bieber gay together. I mean, like it's wild stuff. And so I'll say one thing. Like when I was a kid in like the semi-hood, a popular conspiracy theory was that many members of the elite were drugged up, decadent predators
Mhm.
who were regularly abusing people, including, because this is right by downtown Chicago, girls from the neighborhoods that would be invited up to the top of one of these condos. This was going on all the time. A lot of people were aware of it.
Mhm.
Nothing was ever done about it. And generally, if is either a hood guy or a conservative, you've said this for the past 20 years, the comment is like, oh, what the hell? Another stupid child trafficking internet conspiracy theory. Like, no, these people were actually doing this. Like
Mhm.
Diddy was actually throwing these parties 2 a week for 20 years. He
Oh
was
my
doing this since
God.
Biggie Smalls was on his roster. So again, will they
Yeah.
get the Black Epstein? Maybe, but just they should have gotten. I guess they finally got the White Epstein in the end and then killed him. But
Yeah, I mean, he is dead.
I mean, I guess that's the problem I
Like-
have, whether it's Diddy or R. Kelly, and I do not go down, this path because we all knew. We all knew. So we're going to be
I
outraged
know.
now.
No,
We're going
I
to be
didn't know.
out
Don't put that on me.
well,
20 years
we're-
later.
Charles, I mean, we're both reasonably well-liked black men from Chicago. Like R. Kelly used to drive up to high schools and
He
pimp.
did used to do that. I do that because I had
Like
a friend that went to
everyone
high
knew that.
school
Like
with him.
I remember when I was an athlete for Aurora East, we went into the city for something. Then my best sport day was track, so it was probably just running. But we were competing against Simeon, the Chicago powerhouse, and this was something that someone discussed. Like the teams are talking trash back and forth, and someone was like, "Yo, still got musicians coming to your building." And it was very well known. Like there are pictures of R. Kelly that you can still find on Facebook, like outside of high school, at like 27, cut clean, Bulls jacket on. Very, very often, a lot of people, I think it's especially true in minority communities, kind of wink and nod at this kind of thing, like she fast. Like, hopefully, we're eventually going to hopefully, this will be that move with after Diddy, after Weinstein, after Epstein, where people do say, like, a lot of this stuff is just rape, even child
Yeah.
molestation. Like, you gotta limit the party circuit.
Right. And just for the viewers and listeners, so they know you want to go back, when I referenced Will, we did an episode. I had to find the guy's name. His name was Craig Scott. I called him the Black Robin Hood. He was robbing banks and trying to put money back into the community. So he's robbing these banks. He gets caught. He gets like 50 some odd years, and Trump releases him. So we're interviewing him, and he's like, man, I just think it's unfair because I got all these tags. White man, I'm just saying, if I do a crime, and white man does a crime, I shouldn't get more time. And I'm like, and Will's like, oh, due respect, you seem like a nice guy, but you were robbing banks.
That's my favorite line in the show.
So then he got mad at me because I said, well, how many banks did you rob? I was like, it was like dozens, right? He's like, well, it was more than a dozen and less than 100. I said, well, you got like 1 year a bank. And he's like, well, they didn't know about the other banks. So when he said, that's when he was talking about it's not fair that I get more time, Will was like, fine, just give the white guy more time. I don't want to give you less time. I just want to give the white guy more time.
Oh yeah, there are a few crimes. There aren't that many anymore, but there are a few like interracial rape or sex where black offenders get a longer sentence than white offenders. But I mean, my solution to that would be just give the white guy 2 more years. Like the idea that you ought to let these type of criminals out of prison because they were treated unfairly along racial lines, that's absolutely insane. Yeah. So hopefully they. Yeah, and by the way, last thing, Diddy is cellmates actually with a big city white criminal. That's the boy Sam Bankman-Fried, that scammer who stole.
No way.
Their
You
cellmates.
think I know that being in New York? I wasn't really paying attention to it. That's funny.
Yeah.
Wow.
And Bankman-Fried was actually known for orgies too. Remember, something like his girlfriend, who's a
Yeah.
person, was talking about like, yeah, sometimes I'd play with 6 or 7 guys at a night. So there is a kind of decadence where if you don't have that limiting principle,
right,
you can do pretty much whatever if you have $1 billion.
Obviously. So we still got to save this country. So what about Kamala? Christy, what's the problem with Kamala? Why are you so what's the problem? I mean you want to vote for her, that's fine, but you just seem so down on her. She can't be that bad.
I wouldn't even know where to start. I mean, you have to narrow you'd have to narrow that down.
Okay,
no, really.
Okay.
How about this? How about she answer a question?
Nope, not gonna.
She has an inability to just answer the question.
Right, that does bother me. I do like.
Just answer it. Did you hear CNN last night?
Oh
Even
God, I saw
Van
some clips.
Jones and
Oh
David
no,
Axelrod said that she's serving up word salad.
Yeah. And it's
So
I
when
thought
Van
Van Jones
Jones
said. I
and
thought Van Jones. She
Axelrod,
gave us a gift. She gave me because she gave us weed and teaching jobs. I was like, what the hell was that? Remember the black I got a plan for black men, weed, and you can be a teacher. Really? That's a plan? Okay.
I mean, you should think something should snap in her head and should be like, I sound so dumb right now. I need to just answer the question.
Yeah. Okay. I admit, I was kidding. Obviously, she's really bad. I know she's bad. Trump has his issues. And at the beginning, Will said, obviously I'm a vote for him, but this, that, the other. And we know, that's your play uncle. But I need you two to convince me to vote for him because I'm not there yet. And I know people may be sure. I look at Christy's face. Look at, oh my God, Christy's about to
You
hate.
only have two
Christy's about to.
choices.
No, I
Well,
don't. No, here's the
actually,
thing. No, no. Can
you're
you
in
hear me out?
you're in
How
New
about I
York,
make my case?
so
Let me make my case. That's my point. I said, so part of me, just a small part of me saying, I don't really like either one of them. Obviously, I hate Kamala way more. I would never vote for any of that. I mean, I don't get the conservatives like Trump is so bad, so I'm gonna vote for open borders and transgender kids and all this other nonsense. That's crazy. But what I'm saying is, now I don't know what I would do if I was in Arizona or Michigan or whatever, but I'm in New York. So I can take the moral high ground and just write something in just so I can honestly say I didn't vote for either one of them. So why should I not, Christy?
because if Kamala ends up winning,
But it's
then
not gonna be because of my vote in New York.
oh,
I
I
know
don't
you Trumpies
know.
say he's doing great and he's coming to Madison Square Garden
Yeah,
and
I was
he's
gonna
gonna
say you
out
should go
and he's
visit
gonna
him.
he's gonna outperform, and I think he will. He's gonna do like Lee Zeldin. You remember 2 years ago when they said
Yep.
when Lee lost, I think they got it wrong. They said all the conservatives said there was going to be a red wave, and then when there wasn't, they say, see, it wasn't. Now they were wrong because they overestimated, but I think people didn't look at the numbers properly. If Republicans, if Lee Zeldin runs in New York as governor, and in New York City, Republicans traditionally get 25%, and he gets 40. And then you look at the map of Manhattan and he wins neighborhoods outright that a Republican never won. Isn't that a big jump? Now, he may not have gotten enough to win the election, but if he goes from 12 to 21, if he goes from 18 to 30, that's almost doubling what you normally get. So I think that's what we can see in Trump. Trump will get a lot more than he did the last two times, but he's not winning the state.
Of course not.
Right. So I can just not vote for either one of them and then be like, see, I didn't vote for either one of those yahoos. Right? Can I do that, Chrissy? Can I do it?
Go ahead, Will.
All right. I mean, so first
She's
of
about
all,
to
like,
announce she's never going to appear with me again.
no, I mean, I think Christie is almost ethically annoyed by that. Like, you think one of the candidates is better? It's the candidate for my party, which
Yeah,
you
one of
probably
them
vote
is
for
better
that.
because Kamala is an alive Biden, but she's a moron. I acknowledge the fact that she's stupid, and I don't know how she got a lot of grade. I will say it. I only called two people stupid on Twitter since I've been on that. I don't call names, and Kamala was one of them. I can't remember who the other one was. Kamala's a dumb person. I don't care. But she got it with the law school. I don't care. She's dumb. She can't think on her own. Lots of people can read enough, and if they study enough, they can figure something out. But can she answer a question? Not just not answer a question because she's a bad politician. I mean, she really can't. Like, if you just had dinner with her and you said, so what do you think about, people carjacking? Well, I think it's bad. Well, what do you think we should do? Well, I'm one who's prosecuted people before, but that's not telling me what to do. Well, I think it's really bad and you shouldn't do it. Well, what should we do to them? Well, I prefer greens. My greens are so good, I make them in a tub because I need a big enough vessel to make them all. But what about the carjacking? I bought the Roy Ayers Everybody Loves the Sunshine because it's one of my favorites. She's just a dumb person. So yes, one of them is better, but not by much. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Will.
Yeah, I mean, so like, first of all, I'm not the poster boy for kind of conventional morality. Like, so there are two levels here. One, you should vote for Trump if you are in a place where this matters and you lean to the right, because voting for Kamala Harris would mean certain specific things. Like, I mean, the most obvious for me is immigration. Like 12 million illegals came into the country. I think that's probably the correct figure over the 3 years of the Biden-Harris administration, and
I
that's
don't want
insane.
that.
Yeah, but I mean, like, so like New York or Chicago, smaller New York, but 10, 12 million people, like Chicago came into the country. Chicago land Like the top half of Illinois came into the country illegally,
Right.
like cut its ankle monitor off and just wandered into the heartland. So,
Right.
I mean, imagine how you'd react to that. And in fact, the city of Chicago versus all illegals, not legal immigrants, have pretty similar crime rates. Like, how would you react to 12 million people from the Windy just suddenly working their way down into Nebraska, Arizona, so on down the line? And the fact that that sounds like a ridiculous, unpleasant scenario illustrates how crazy it is that we're allowing this with foreigners who've all broken the law to get here. So, like, there are practical reasons to vote for Trump. The reason to vote against him is sort of Trump is an asshole. Like, he's been accused of sexual assault by women from his party and club days, usually in a kind of broad and vague sense, but you know that is there. Divorces, financial scandals. But the practical reason to vote for Trump is he has a policy on immigration, crime, so on you probably support. Now, what you're asking, though, is something a little different. It's kind of if you, as a businessman and show host, can just say, I didn't vote for either of them, they're both a joke, and kind of just book people across, all lines, why wouldn't you do that? There's not really a good answer to that question. People make rational, amoral choices all the time. I think that the answer, and I'm not necessarily the strongest advocate for this kind of thing, but the answer is because you do recognize a clear choice and you should support it as opposed to being crazily ecumenical about this. Like, I don't think anyone really thinks you're a Kamala Harris voter. So if there is a two-person election, you might as well just say, hey, I'm going to pick this guy. I know a lot of people like Wesley Yang that are saying things online like, I might just write in Thomas Jefferson. And the short answer would be like they're getting a lot of criticism for that being a punk move, and there's some truth to that. Just pick the guy you prefer. Add one vote to the column.
All right, let me
Yeah,
ask you.
let
No,
me
go
say
ahead,
this
Chris.
real quick. I guess if you go back to New York, right? At some point, conservatives have to start fighting for blue states and blue cities, and
Mhm.
it's not going to happen all at once. We're going to have to knock down the wall a
What's going to
a
happen
little bit.
locally? Is it? It's not going to happen at the top of the ticket with Trump.
But here it
Right.
is. It happened a little bit in the governor's race. So here in the presidential race, if Trump can make a strong showing, then what happens? More resources. The GOP starts funneling more money into New
Oh,
York
they're
to actually
feckless. They're
fight
not that
for it.
bright. I don't trust that. They're stupid people too.
So that would be my reason. I'm ignoring you today. Put another chink into the blue wall and show that New York shouldn't just be lost for all
See,
eternity.
Republicans are racist. What's all this
That's what
chink
I was going to
nonsense?
say. Republican podcaster makes racist comment about
Yeah.
Asian Americans.
We need more chink. That's not right. That's not right, Christy. But we admonished her. You all remember that. So I'm looking at this tweet from Torrey Smith. I'm assuming it's a former wide receiver. Which team did Torrey play for? The name sounds familiar. I can't think of who he is. But he tweets, how is Trump a great representative for Christians? Not looking to argue or debate with folks. I'm just curious, right? And it made me think that obviously he's not, right? But that's the wrong question. Who said he should be? Right? I mean, like, if you're a devout Christian, if you're an Orthodox Jew, if you're a religious Muslim, and you don't pay attention to this nonsense, you don't like his behavior or whatever, but you're voting your values, I would assume the only options you have is to hold your nose and vote for Trump, which I didn't say I wouldn't do, or sit at home and write someone in. We can argue against that, Christy. But what I'm saying is like, it's odd. I know you get it from both sides. There's some pastor, I had to mute him because he was boring me with his nonsense. Like the moral Christian thing to do is to vote for Kamala. Trump is a jerk, but Trump's not advocating openly. And he may allow stuff to do. Like Kamala was right in the debate. I mean, in the interview with Brett, when she was pushed on and he was right too. So he asked about transing prisoners. And she did a good job of deflecting on that one because she said, well, it happened when Trump was president too. And that's true. And then Brett's comeback was good. Brett's comeback was, yes, well, the Trump administration said that was the law that already in place, but he doesn't agree with it. You're advocating for it. So are you saying that you're advocating for it? So I don't understand the moral case for, abortion through 9 months, whether you're pro-choice. Most people see that's one of those things you mentioned earlier, Christy, about them skewing the questions in a poll. So yeah, if you ask slightly more than half of the Americans in a poll, if they're pro-choice or pro-life, a large percentage of them, almost somewhere around half, would say pro-choice. But you got to ask follow-ups until when, right? 80% of them have a cutoff, right? So that's the problem. The immigration thing, the cash bail, crime. There's all these things that people don't know. What's going on in schools? And you're going to say, and the open attack against Christianity. Only one of the two parties took God out of their platform years ago.
Right.
And now Kamala allegedly said, somebody screams out, what they say, Christ is king, and said, you're at the wrong rally. So, and then to fix that, it's like, well, why don't you just show up at a black church? They're stupid. They'll cheer when you walk in. Right? That's what I don't get. I'm not telling any of my friends who are left-leaning, who are one-issue voters, who love what Kamala believes. Of course they should vote for her. They like her. Or the ones who don't like her, but they hate Trump and they got TDS. So fine, sit at home. But I don't get you saying, I have one friend in my circle who, tell me something good about Kamala. Nothing. I hate her. Everything about her is terrible. Her policies are terrible. What they do with immigration is terrible. Crime, everything about her is bad. But I don't think Trump will leave if he wins, so I'm voting for her. That's my first time ever meeting somebody. It blew my mind. Whoa. So you disagree with everything she's pushing? Correct, Charles. And you're still going to not just sit at home, vote for her, correct. But you're in a red state. You could just sit home. Nah, I can't chance that. I got to try to stop him.
Because they don't think Trump will what? I didn't catch
leave
that.
office.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah.
He's going to be a tyrant, and he's never, at 80 years old, he's going to stay in office till he's 114.
Well, I mean, if we're talking about God, I think that's who's probably going to take Trump out of office. I mean, Trump is over 80. Like we keep pretending.
Big Macs.
Yeah, but like we keep pretending that these very ordinary humans are sort of immortal. Like Joe Biden used to be one of the funniest guys in the Senate. It was kind of depressing to watch him collapse. So it was really obvious at the end when people were saying, like, will Joe give it up or go for another 4 years? Like, no, Joe, if he screwed up the debate like he did, is going to get out of the spotlight because he's on the verge of death. Like, who's he looking at off screen? People kept asking him, Jesus. And it's the same thing with Trump. Trump is 78, I think is what we said earlier.
Right.
So, no, he's not going to be a tyrant in office for 10 years who then hands over the throne to Barron Trump. By the way, there's no way as a political scientist for that to happen. When people talk about the January 6th riot potentially disrupting American democracy, Congress does have to vote to certify elections, but after their bodyguards squired them off the floor, like if the fighting had taken 6 hours, they just would have come back the next day and voted. Like
Right.
Government's not a game of capture the flag, where
Right.
if your fighting men beat the other sides, then you're the king. So that's one point. But I think there actually is a deeper point that you and Christy were talking about, which is kind of the personal versus the political. And leftists tend to think of these as the same. So they'll describe like talking to their husband at home as emotional labor. There's actually a book called The Personal is Political. In reality, though, there's a big difference. Like Trump himself is an asshole. Like he's a well-known New York businessman. I don't think he's a rapist, but I'm sure he has sexually harassed dozens of people in that come here, baby kind of way. He's moved his money all around the world. He's done all these kind of things personally. That doesn't have a whole lot to do, just as it didn't with Bill Clinton or Ronald Reagan, with the kind of policies he's going to implement in office. So as a Christian, I mean, first of all, you should be voting as a citizen as well as a Christian. But if you're voting on the basis of the policies that you think will be most Christian friendly on this planet, given these candidates, I don't really see how Harris would be a choice over Trump. I don't really think that the pro-trans or hardcore pro-LGBT agenda is exactly biblical,
Right.
So you can say I don't like Trump at all, but if I'm voting on these religious grounds, who's more friendly to the Holy Land? Like you could throw a whole bunch of things in there, and I think the answer is pretty obvious.
Yeah, it seems odd to me. And then the last thing I've noticed in your circles in these conversations, are you finding this probably what left me most dismayed? I knew that we weren't undereducating people and people just didn't know enough. And I often say here, I was like, yeah, but people don't pay attention. They don't know who Candace Owens is. You think that this is doing this. They don't know these people. That I knew, but I didn't know they knew nothing. These people know. Did you know that people knew nothing, Christy? You traveled, you ran far. These people know nothing.
Right.
Like, I'm shocked by how little they know. So they're voting though. Keep in mind, I'm talking about people who, I'm not talking about the 20-year-olds like, man, I don't vote, right? I'm talking about people who are going to vote. They usually at minimum vote every 4 years in the presidential elections.
Right.
And I tell them things. Let me give you some examples. Well, what are your views? I'm not telling you who to pick. I just want to know where you stand politically. So what are your views on the transgender thing? Well, I don't really like it. Now, I'm not saying they could say I love it. I think it's fact. But they say I don't like it. I said, but you say you were kind of toying with Biden and then now Kamala Harris. But what do you think about the trans day at the White House? What do you mean? No, I mean, when they had trans day at the White House, I don't know what you're talking about. You don't know that they had transit? No, I didn't know that. Okay. What about the interview that Biden did with Dylan? What's his name? Mulvaney, right? Isn't that his name? Something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What about that interview? What do you mean? The guy who said he was on his 200th day of being a girl. I don't know what you're talking about. Oh, okay, fine. You've seen the large number of people walking on the border, right? Yes. So what do you think about that, the immigration issue? Well, I think it's sad that they have all these problems, but what? But how do you think they're here? I think the governor of Texas shouldn't have bused them to New York. Yeah, but how did they get here? I don't know. Okay. Do you think they should come in illegally? No. Did you know that Texas tried to stop them and Biden sued the governor of Texas, saying that he should not have any purview in what's going on in the state? No, I didn't know that. Transing kids in school, didn't know that. Cash bail, nothing. I mean, what do you? Why are you voting then? You don't know anything. I don't care if you know. Now, this is what I'm saying, Christy. I don't care if you know this and you like it. I might disagree with it, but this is America. I respect that. I love abortion. I think that there should be there's no such thing as an illegal. Everybody should be here. Then you should vote. I don't care. Why would I waste my energy being upset at them when there's millions of people who don't know that they disagree with her that's going to the polls to vote for her? These people are stupid, Christy. They're absolutely stupid.
So I obviously we want to hear what Christy says there, but I just pulled this up because I thought it was interesting. Like when you talk about who the average voter is, this is a guy named Theo. He leans to the left, like Ukrainian flag in the profile picture. But he's doing some voter canvassing for a nonpartisan group. And this is what he just said. I'm at an insane undecided voter canvassing tonight. He's a mixed black dude in his 50s, registered independent, seemingly on meth. He lists his top 3 presidents as Carter because he's nice, Reagan because of that Contra thing, them Contra boys, and then Obama because he's black. Hates Trump, is unsure about Harris because, quote, she's a woman. Additionally, said the Electoral College is communist, won't vote, but said if he does, his daughter will decide who for because she's way smarter than me. And this just goes on and on, but it's like that's who a lot of people are if you've ever done any canvassing. Like if you go door to door, I used to be a canvas manager for the Human Rights Campaign, and we'd talk about gay rights bills and this kind of thing. We went door to door, and people would ask questions like, which party has the elephant as a symbol? You know, so like that's who a lot of the undecided voters are.
They just don't know, Christy.
So 2 things really fast. There was a period, in my life where I had a legal career. So I was, working long hours. I was a single mom. So I had 2 kids, I had 3 kids, 2 younger ones. One had autism. They'd be at school. By the time I got them from, after school, I maybe had 2-3 hours to do homework and put them to bed. The last thing I cared about was politics. And this is from somebody that loved politics. I just didn't have time for it. I mean, life was good. I didn't have any, real issues. So I didn't have the need to turn on the news to see, what was going on. I think we kind of started waking up with COVID, right? When we're like, okay, wait a minute, we got to wear masks because why? And, seeing our kids, like they're teaching our kids what? So that's like kind of when we started, tuning in. Now I think people are kind of tuning in because we're like, okay, why is it costing me $50 for a quick, some bread and some, soda at the store or whatever, right? The prices of food now is making people say, wait, what is going on? And then all the migrant stuff they're seeing coming in. So I think most people, when times are good and things are okay, they don't really care about politics because, especially not national politics, they're living their lives. It's only now that I think people are kind of starting to pay attention. So I think people are a little more informed just on the surfaces, just wanting to know, why is food so expensive? Why is gas so expensive? What is going on?
I got one question, then I got one problem. I get what you said. I got one slight problem with it. But my question is, when you were busy and doing all that, so you weren't paying attention, were you still voting?
I was still voting. I'm a very ignorant voter. Very ignorant.
So I would have said you didn't know anything.
So I would have been similar, but let me tell you the remedy for that really quick. So usually Arizona is a same day, right? Because Arizona is generally a red state, although now it's kind of, turning purple, but it's generally red. So mostly it's same day. After 2022, Turning Point decided to fix that. So they are aggressively going after legal ballot chasing. So they've hired an insane amount of people. And right now, I think Republicans are leading Democrats like almost close to like, I don't know, don't get me wrong, but it's double digits in turning in early ballots. That's never happened before. And what this is just really people making connections with their neighbors, with their friends, canvassing on a large scale, using an app, getting to know each other. So I think that is kind of the remedy for these, low propensity, low informed voters is just, hey, having a neighborhood barbecue, inviting them, and then sliding in a little politics, to
Right.
kind of pique their interest. And then following up with them, like, hey, did you turn in that ballot? We need you to, vote for Trump or, vote for, Kerry. Please vote for
Oh,
Kerry,
oh,
Arizona. That was my plug.
well, I want to end with asking you what your thought, not who you want to win. We know that, but what you think is going to happen. But I got to, but I said I had a question and a follow up. My only issue with what you said about, now you think after COVID and this and the prices that people are paying attention. Just remember, I'm not saying you're wrong, but remember all the things I told you about how these people don't know anything. This was in the last month. So
Mm.
this was, against the backdrop of all that, and they still don't know anything. So we got a long way to go. They're moving in the right direction, but we got to find a way to reach those people. So Will, you first. What's your predictions? What do you think is going to happen?
My prediction is that Trump's going to win. Now, this is a really unpredictable election cycle, I will say. So, I mean, like Trump definitely would have won against Biden, but the other candidate dropped out, and then Trump looked like Harris had a decent sized edge, but then three people now tried to kill Trump, the guy on the GOP side. That I think is really going to drive voting at a subtle, low key level that people aren't talking about. The idea that these damned annoying liberal yappers who talk constantly about how their rights are going to be taken away and they're going to be thrown into death camps and so on, like these people, or at least people in the center right influenced by them, are actually shooting at the president. Like the actual negative thing that's happening is happening over here. But then just more stuff happened. RFK endorsed Trump and Tulsi Gabbard became a Republican. Like the screenwriters are going hard. So I don't think it's all that predictable. But like right now, just looking at the betting markets, I'd say it's Trump. There's not, and that's why they're so desperate. They're trying to stop him with these stories. Like allegedly he grabbed my ass when I was a year underage in 1992. No, I don't have any photos or witnesses. I mean, I think there's going to be more of this kind of stuff that comes out. I don't think it's going to derail him. I think Trump's going to win by 1 or 2 points.
Christy?
It will either be Trump
Trump or Kamala?
in a landslide, or if it's close, they're going to steal it. That's what I think.
You really
In either way, there's going to be civil unrest. I think there's going to be.
Well, two things. You really think they're stealing? I mean, just because a couple of known forged ballots got through in Colorado, it's only 25% of them. They stopped 3/4 of them. And you really think that there'll be civil unrest if he wins in a landslide? I don't see it happening, but he gets over 300. And you think that, and he wins half of the battleground state. You think there's still civil wheels over there?
The Democrats? Yeah. Either side is going to turn up. For sure.
Yeah. The only, like, when you look at like quality of fighting men and so on, like I think the Republicans are just as many guys that would get out in the streets as the Democrats. The reason there's more civility in GOP areas, one, there's a lot of respect for your in-group. You don't want to burn down your own downtown. But also, two, they're just more spread out. Like you go to some of these states, you go into Kentucky. I mean, you have 5 cities that are each 30,000 people sitting on tops of mountains, basically. When you think about what hollers are, so it's hard to get those people together in any kind of density. I think if Trump loses and it's clearly unfair, frankly, you're going to see more people shooting politicians. Like I hate to put it that way, but I wouldn't want to be like a poorly performing Hispanic director of the Border Patrol for a month after a fraudulent looking Kamala Harris win. And Christy just made a good point. Like, I don't think that most American elections are stolen in the real sense of like some guy in Atlanta opens up a valise and takes out 50,000 votes, Democratic Republic of the Congo style. But I do think, like, when you look at this ballot harvesting shit, like, we all saw that video of the guy driving around his car with 100 ballots in it. And that was just sort of faded from, you can't believe Veritas.
Right.
And they weren't really able to defend themselves. They're going through all kind of internal issues. A couple of years after this, the guy who founded it all got fired, blah, blah, blah. But like today, I saw someone who was filming their son filling out their secret ballot. Yeah. And Charles, you saw this too. I think you commented on it. It was like, my black boys.
That's voter fraud.
Yeah, but it's like, my black boys voting for Harris. Let's put that in the envelope together. That stuff where you send ballots to a house and families fill them out together, where you have ballot drop boxes, where you need a signature of anything, all that stuff, those things are going to pile on against Trump. That's the worry.
Yeah, and you know, you make a good point. I hate to go on. I'm going to finish this here, but I said that in 20 when he lost, and I was like, the people were saying was there cheating going on, and I said, but of course there was. It's just people have different definitions. Will said it greatly. You think that means it's the machines, or they're erasing ballots, or that ballot harvest, all that stuff. I think stuff like that is if you're telling your kid who they're voting for, that's voter fraud. Right? You don't know that kid either probably would more likely wouldn't have voted. He probably wouldn't have voted for Trump, but he probably just wouldn't vote. So you're dragging people to the polls, right? Or you're filling out that stuff for them. Or like when you intentionally or not voting where you used to live because you're like, I still live there and I know I'm still on the ballot there, but I vote there, and then you forget and then you vote there. You just voted twice, right? People do stuff like that all the time when you're not checking signatures. There's little things. And when you're talking about 5 or 6 battleground states, 4,000 to 3,000 votes each, that stuff matters, right? In addition to all the intentional stuff. But so I don't know. I guess that means I have to give one, right? I didn't really think about it. I predict that if I'm looking at the trends now, who knows what they're gonna I don't know. I don't know about a blowout, but I think that when it's close, it always helps the Democrats. So I think that Kamala is still Kamala's to lose, but everything's trending towards Trump. So if he can make enough move in the next few days, I think Trump will win. But if the election were today, I would say Kamala would win. But Tuesday's a different story.
Interesting.
All right. So I guess that's it.
All
I guess
right.
we will find out what happens, and then we'll have to do a follow-up and say who was right. We all have a slightly different answer, so we'll see then. But until then, it's great talking to you all, and thanks for joining us.
Nice seeing y'all.
Have a good evening.
Land of the free and a home of the brave. God get all of the praise. I got a country to save, cause I'm Patriot J and I'm saving a day.